Hey, and welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Rules Handbook. Today we're in an interesting place where
Watch your head.
of all places, I am at SafeHouse in Chicago, and this is a spy-themed restaurant. You can see it's very interactive all over the place. You have things to interact with. There are things to press. There is a whole performative side of this as well when you enter the restaurant. So I thought I'd give you a tour today and talk about this, which I think could be an emerging trend in terms of a focus on more experiential entertainment here in the restaurant industry. So let's take that tour today. Okay, so we'll begin the tour here at SafeHouse in Chicago. This restaurant opened in 2017. And the backstory is you may have seen on TV and even in the old movie Major League, the first SafeHouse, which was opened in 1966 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, by a gentleman named Baldwin. He retired in 2015 and sold it to the Marcus Corporation, and then eventually 2016 they began construction on this location in Chicago, and the design, by the way, is by the Getty's Group. So the hands have changed in terms of the ownership, and I think with the new location opening up, there are new potentials maybe for this concept to spread a little bit as opposed to being one boutique place in Milwaukee. Now, of course, the one in Milwaukee, if you've been there, I haven't yet myself, is pretty famous and pretty historic, I would say, in many respects. So here's my secret agent tag, and I will show you this actually at the end of the video, and hopefully that will inspire you to stick around until the end. So as I mentioned, this is in Chicago, Illinois. I had a chance to visit it in 2018. This shows you the location so you could see off of North Michigan Avenue in Ontario. Really prime real estate. So it must be pretty expensive, I would say, the rent here. Pay attention to the hotel. If you saw on that map, there's a hotel right there, and that's going to come back to play a little role at the end of this video in terms of our escape route, and more on that later. Now, I did give you the warning at the beginning, again, before we go any further in this video. If you don't want the experience ruined, if you don't want spoilers, please do not watch this video. And that's really one of the fun things about SafeHouse, is the first time you go through it, it's incredibly unique. So I will go ahead and describe things, giving away some secrets. But again, like a magician, and if you don't want to learn the tricks and have it ruin the trick for you, then don't listen to this video. So one of the cool things about this is on the outside, there isn't a lot of marking. You see this kind of cool signage here that is a fictional series of offices, and this actually has some jokes in it, as you can maybe see here. If you come to SafeHouse, you basically wait outside, and eventually you sometimes, I think, open the door, and the person will, the secret agent inside. And check out that sign just to the right there too. It's another cool feature. So the secret agent eventually will let you in to the SafeHouse. And once you enter the SafeHouse, there's a whole series of performative moments that happen. And if you check out the decor here, it's pretty cool. So they've done a lot in this little waiting room as far as this like throwback vintage era kind of a feel to it. And basically when you enter this room, a whole lot of things start to happen in terms of the secret agent. You have to first state the password to get into the SafeHouse. I won't tell you what it is, but it's super obvious. And you're seeing some of the scenes here, and I'll talk about this, what exactly we're watching. But after you give the password, in order to get into that stairway down just past that map on the wooden wall there, you have to do something else. So you have to perform for somebody, for the agent. This is actually another agent standing in when the first agent pictured there in the white suit, white outfit, I think took a short break. So one of the cool things is you come into the restaurant, and once you start to eat, you discover, lo and behold, all this time your performance in the waiting room is being videoed and shown to the rest of the restaurant. And it's kind of cool here, the surveillance cameras. When you see this, one of the fun things about SafeHouse is that they take the spy theme and things like surveillance and make it kind of fun, I guess you would say, as part of the themed experience. I was thinking when I visited, it reminded me of some of the vintage appeal of the DDR Museum in Berlin. Much different context here with the Stasi and so forth, and not as fun, although there is a restaurant as well adjoining the DDR Museum, but a different context. And the other place I thought of, it's also in Berlin, is die Tagung, which is it means the party in German, as in political party. And this is a very nostalgic era of East Germany and Marxism, those times, if you will, of the past and the political past, even though it maybe has a negative connotation, is used, at least in the case of the Tagung in Berlin, to some very effective, connections with the guests in a nostalgic sense. So back to SafeHouse here. Once you are able to give the password and then do this performance, which in our case amounted to sort of a duel to the death that the two of us had to do, the button is pressed and you get to go into the restaurant. And I think I have a video coming up of the descent into the restaurant. And then leaving SafeHouse is also very cool, because then you have some choices about how to leave. As you enter the restaurant, the first thing you see is just how much they've done in terms of the decor. In the video today, we'll look at all aspects of the interior of SafeHouse. This is the men's restroom, so we'll check that out. It has like the James Bond thing going there with the Bond girls. This is a little photo booth that you can partake in some of the technology there, which is just near the gift shop. It's a very small gift shop, I would say. You'll notice that the menus themselves, the accoutrements on the table, also have theming to them, are also connected to this. The names of the various food items have all sorts of connotations of, Cold War era spy stuff, all kinds of different names for it. On the menu for the food items. You see here the very small gift shop, so it's not huge. It's just as you walk in and as you're greeted, you see the gift shop to your left. This is one of many technology areas inside SafeHouse, and I think it's one of the things that makes it very appealing as a theme space, is the use of technology. Okay, so this is what happens when you actually enter the restaurant. It's kind of dramatic, right? There's a lot of light stuff going on. They really spent time in all aspects of designing this restaurant, from the entrance to the exit, like I said, the bathrooms, the restaurant itself. It's just a very, I think, innovative venue. For me, it's a highlight just of what a themed restaurant or a themed experience could be. And now we're actually entering the restaurant. And you see, very dramatic historical images, portraits. To the left is our service station. Now here is what we were actually participating in. So you could see the agent there and this family. They're asked to perform in order to get into the restaurant. And indeed, they're going down the stairs. And those are the stairs we just went down. But this lobby, this waiting area, is not only well designed thematically, but it also is performative. And we're looking at the menu here a little bit, but one of the things I think that's important in theme spaces and experiential or immersive spaces of the present is that they do immerse us somehow in the environs, in the experiences. A lot of brick and mortar stores have suffered in the world, not just because of Amazon, say, and some of the changes in commerce, but because I think some of those stores don't offer a true experience to the guest. Think about if you could transform some of these big box stores that are maybe struggling a little bit and develop experiences. Now, I realize fully that in the case of a restaurant like this, a themed restaurant, it's a much different operation, a much different approach. But I think one of the things, as we see the new Star Wars hotel at Disney underway, which is going to be fully immersive, not unlike SafeHouse, but on a bigger scale with storylines and performance and costumes, it's going to be really, I think, amazing. But I think this is the trend of the future. Experiences, Pine and Gilmore, their work on the experience economy and so forth. This is really where we need to be at, I think, if we're thinking about transforming commerce. Or experiences that are brick and mortar. In other words, they're not online, they're not an app, they're not some form of virtual reality. They're actually physical. So this is the interior of the restaurant you're seeing, and I think, as I mentioned earlier, you could see that they really did do a remarkable job just in terms of all the theming. You look up, you see all this interesting stuff. Again, you go into the restrooms. There are secret areas to explore. In fact, I think with the menu there earlier, maybe you saw that. One of the things you get as a guest when you first enter, in addition to the menu, is a guide of sorts that has a checklist, so you can do certain things and discover mysteries, find clues, find secret things in the restaurant, maybe some code words, write those down, and it helps you in your journey of solving things. There was a few people we interacted with when we went to SafeHouse, and one woman said every time she comes back, she discovers something new. And I think this is one of the things that is a tip. If we're thinking about designing themed and immersive experiences of the future, having this sense of mystery, having this sense of discovery, which I've spoken about in the Immersive Worlds Handbook, having a sense of a quest, of something that you can discover, almost like a role-playing game or something of that nature, I think makes it much more interesting for the guest, for the visitor. If it's just a restaurant with theme, and there are a slew of chains like this, Rainforest Cafe comes to mind, there isn't a story per se, it's decor. In this case, there is a story, I believe, that's being developed, and you're part of that. It's not super specific. They don't necessarily name characters like we're going to see, say, at the Star Wars Hotel that's coming up, but they do have this sense of focusing on putting you in the middle of the experience. Now, I should say one of the things that happens is when you first sit down, the server takes your order, gives you the menu, and then eventually comes back, of course, like a traditional restaurant, and takes your order from the menu based on what you pick. And then they encourage you to walk around the restaurant. And this is, I think, where it gets interesting maybe for the operation of the restaurant. On the one hand, you want to come to a theme restaurant and have two things going on, the experience and the food. The joke in the industry for some time has been that a theme restaurant is mostly about the theme and the experience, if there is one, and then the food comes in sort of at the end. I actually found that the food was good here. I know their I didn't try their hamburgers, but it had a salad. It was very good. So that was a pleasant surprise because, again, probably my stereotype, maybe like yours, is that the food you get in a themed restaurant isn't always the best because you're spending, because the owners of the restaurant have spent so much on the decor, presumably, it's going to be to pay their bills, they have to maybe skimp on the food. That's not the case here at SafeHouse, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that. Now, one challenge in this concept is when the server tells you, okay, your food's being prepared, please feel free to walk around. That's what we did. So we started to walk around, and then eventually our food came, and so in a sense our journey was disrupted. We had to go back to the table, eat, and then after we were done eating, went back and walked around, and it kind of left this moment where I thought, oh, does the server know that we're still in the restaurant? And I think because you have to figure out how to get out of the restaurant, it probably is what gives the server a cue, if you will. We're looking at more of the objects here towards just as you enter the restaurant, but it probably gives the server a cue that you're still in the restaurant. But it's a bit of a challenge because when you're doing both things, when you're eating and trying to explore like you would in a museum or in a theme park, I think it can get distracting. The two things impede on one another, affect one another. You see a kid there on the right looking at these video screens which had this interactive board, and I think I'll show you some video of that in a second. There was a ton of interactive technology here. I have to say I didn't figure all of it out, and I think the reason for that maybe is they want you to visit a second time to check things out. So you're seeing more of the interior of the restaurant. You can see it's just chock full of special effects, of technology, what they did with the design of the interior. It's just very visually appealing. It's busy as hell, isn't it? I mean, it's just so busy, this interior of the restaurant, which I think is very attractive for guests because you're never bored, right? You're constantly looking for something or looking at something. And that, I think, is very appealing going into a restaurant like this and exploring. This is one of I guess you could say mysteries that you have to solve. I couldn't quite figure this out. It had a periscope device, there were instructions, there's a video camera, but this was really cool. And this kind of stuff, I think, if more restaurants or brick and mortar spaces that want to bring guests into their doors do this sort of thing, that is going to be a reason to go and experience it. Now, in the case of maybe shopping, I don't know if stores would necessarily want you, right, to, let's say, have an experience while you're shopping. It could be cool, but it could distract you from your purchases. It could distract you from doing what you're there to do, which is to spend money and to consume things and buy things. Likewise, in a casino, I think sometimes casinos in the past, like MGM when they had the yellow brick road, it was really cool. We're looking at one of the cool experiences here with the video screens. There's like a thermonuclear explosion that happens if you press the right buttons in the right sequence. And I'm kind of just trying to show you some of that now. But what I was thinking is, like with the MGM in Las Vegas, when they had the yellow brick road, it was really cool for kids and families to look at, but it maybe distracted from the main goal, which is to spend money on the gambling, to spend money in the restaurants and so forth. So that's sort of like contradiction, if you will, between the bottom line of the venue and the experiences, the mystery, the performance, whatever you want to call all this stuff that we're doing here, I think is a challenge for a number of spaces that try to utilize some kind of performance or something of a nature of discovery as we're experiencing here. So we'll leave the video for a second and look at some more stills. I have to say, though, that overall, visiting this restaurant, I felt like it was one of the most unique themed spaces I've ever seen anywhere. Again, I've seen other spaces, like I mentioned, particularly in Berlin, that reminded me of some of the things, but this took it to a new level with the video screens, all the accoutrements, the mysterious spaces. This is an example here where you can explore a little bit, and I think I'll get some video of the different alcoves here. This one's kind of cool, so there's like a backstage area. I heard there's like an interrogation room, I guess, like with large parties. I don't know if you have to, what do you have to do to get in there, and maybe that's what we saw there. Again, visiting a space like this, like maybe you would as a guest, I'm trying to just take everything in, and I'm not necessarily capturing everything. And maybe that's a bit of a truism, if you will, about a space like this, is that you are open to discovering new things. There's a little keyhole there, which is one of the exits. Again, we're getting a look at the some of the back areas, like a lot of stuff just to explore and discover. And I have to say, with kids that came with families, it was very popular, and it's pretty empty. We got there right at opening, but eventually the restaurant was really buzzing, and there were a lot of people, large groups. Again, there was a mix of families. There were also like groups of younger people, and I think the restaurant and the bar itself is open till like 2 a.m. And I was actually thinking, earlier I was talking about how it was challenging trying to eat and experience at the same time. I think if you came with a group, even like it would be good, maybe like staff development or something like that, if you could imagine this as an activity with a corporate group or something like that. And I think in such a case, you would have more opportunities maybe to explore. Like if you're just drinking and eating some appetizers and not doing a full-on dinner, I think you could get a lot more out of the space just in terms of some of the experiences. So I'm continuing to spin around here. You've seen some of this already before. To the left is that table with the sonic canopy that comes down. That was the one I featured at the beginning of the video and my intro. You're just seeing all kinds of cabinets with here. I thought I actually opened those up and that they had artifacts in them. Just a lot of cool stuff at the bars, the watch collection. There's all the weapons on the wall. I heard that I believe the other bar in the evening, they sometimes do magic tricks and have like performance as a part of it. But what's really cool about SafeHouse is that every nook and cranny of this restaurant, you see stuff. I mean, you look above and you see that, like a James Bond watercraft or something like that. There are things to explore on the wall. You see the kids running because the restroom itself has some performative stuff going on. And to me, that's what makes a great themed or experiential space, is that there's stuff to discover, there's interactivity, you're a part of it, you feel like you have a purpose in the space. Your purpose is not just eating or buying something or going to a gift shop. It is actually you're completing the space, and you can see how excited those kids are. They're sort of talking about what they experience. Really great place, I would say, for families. And again, large groups. I think there's a social dimension to a space like this because it's inherently fun. When I talked about the Data Air Museum earlier, the Data Air Museum is much more serious in intent, and so therefore it's probably not a good comparison, say, to SafeHouse. With SafeHouse, they're making things like spies and thermonuclear war and secret weapons and surveillance and all kinds of things that relate to spy culture. They're making it fun, and as a result, it's easier, obviously, for the guests to experience it. You could say at some level there's maybe some darkness just to some of the themes if you think about spies and death and espionage and assassination, but it's really all done in an entirely fun way here, as opposed to a space like the Data Air Museum or even the Tagung, the one I mentioned. That one doesn't have much of a story or much in terms of interactivity. A couple of the bathrooms, so the men and the women's, this is actually the unisex we're seeing here. In a unisex bathroom, I believe I have a video coming up, you actually lock the door. It's kind of like in some of those high-end clubs, and it has an effect where it fogs up the exterior so people can't see in, but you can still see out. This is the men's room, so it has the whole James Bond kind of theme to it. Pretty heteronormative right here. A golden urinal for the man with the golden gun, so a little bit of phallic humor to go with it. There is some like interactive stuff that goes on with sirens and lights. I actually didn't figure out how it worked in the men's room. My wife went into the ladies' room, and I think I have a video of that. There's like a big sound that happens when you, I think, pick up a leaf that's covering maybe the male, body parts or something like that is, I think, what happens in the women's restroom. Get some video back in here. This is just showing you a little bit of the decor here. So they certainly thought about trying to keep the theming going here. It's kind of interesting, right? The legs of the woman as you walk into the restroom. It certainly works as a themed restroom. The Milwaukee location of SafeHouse, by the way, is pretty famous and is on a list of, I think, top 10 restrooms in the United States. And I don't know if the Chicago one has gotten on any of those lists yet, but it definitely had cool themed restrooms. If that's your thing, you will certainly like it. The screen is going dark here. What I'm trying to do, I think, is show you the effect in the restroom with the fog effect. And I thought I had captured some of that in video. We'll just go through into the next clip. Back into the restaurant. Oh, there is the women's room. So you could see the kids. People are taking pictures. And there was like a big sound that goes off, and everyone kind of jumped when that happened. So that's kind of cool. Again, it gives the guests something exciting. It gives the guests something that's memorable, that's above and beyond the typical kind of thing. Most of our restrooms in this is kind of a false door. It's kind of fun. So you think it leads somewhere and it doesn't. And there's stuff like that throughout SafeHouse that, for me, brings about that issue of mystery and discovery, which is always, I think, key for, in my mind, creating exciting experiential spaces. So you come to a false wall. But I was mentioning earlier that most restrooms have a very utilitarian connotation. And in this case, we're getting something entirely different. And I just realized there that was the fog effect on the unisex restroom. I didn't get a good video of it, but you kind of get the idea, I think. And again, I hope you get an opportunity, if you're in Chicago, to go to SafeHouse to check this interesting restaurant out, because it really does offer some things that are, I think, so unique that you probably will not see anywhere else in any kind of a space. Certainly not in a restaurant, I would offer. And we're seeing here an image of some of the things you could purchase in the gift shop. Notably, you can get those cool salt and pepper shakers that you see on the bottom right. You can get goofy glasses, dress up, and sort of take on a spy persona. I would certainly say the gift shop and maybe some of the merch that, could be improved upon. I think it's something maybe as they develop the space, I could see them selling a ton more merchandise. The selection just, I don't think, is quite there yet, but hopefully in the future they will pick that up. Now, it's kind of cool here when you leave. There are two ways to leave SafeHouse. We wanted the cooler way, and so our server told us you had to call a particular number on the phone, and then eventually they buzz you in, and you could see the phone here. This is, I think, part of the cool theming for me is when you actually exit. I won't play the music, but it's like your typical spy music that you might expect, and there's going to be like this kind of dramatic stuff going on here. So what people started doing, kind of like the gum wall in Seattle, is they take their secret agent names. These are like little lasers, like in the spy movies, like if they're doing a heist or something, you have to jump over or duck below. So that was pretty cool. Again, imagine kids here. Kids are going to absolutely go crazy with this kind of thing. But all throughout this exit area, you see all the residue of all the spy names from all the guests who have visited. And you can see there's like thousands of these. So it's certainly very popular, having only been open for really a year or so during my visit in 2018. But this was really cool. And I think when you do something like this, both upon entry and exit, it creates something memorable with the guest. When I used to work in the theme park industry in Six Flags, we always talked about one of the most important contact points with the guest emotionally was to be made at the front gate. So we would greet guests, when they walked in the morning, and when they left at night and the park was ready to close, we would wish them, a happy, a good evening, and we would, of course, ask them to come back again. And that's really key. So I think having the first experience and last experience being very, very, very memorable. If you think of behavioral economists like Dan Ariely, they talk about how we often remember high and low points in our experiences, particularly in these consumer experiences. So in the case of a themed space like this, I think it's very important. There's my secret agent name, and I'm going to put it somewhere on the wall here, so I guess next time I go I can look for it if I can find it, although it'll probably get covered here in the palimpsest. So you go through all these various doors, and like there's some false exits. You have to kind of figure your way out. This is pretty elaborate. Looks like there's a vault door here. So again, they spent quite a bit of money just on an exit experience, which says something, I think, very nice about just how they took the design of this very seriously. There was a sign there for a hotel, I think, and we're going to be exiting here. Thought, nope, that's not the exit. So it's one of these, you have to, look for it, not the exit, turn around, go up the stairs. This was kind of cool as well. Again, it really gives the guests like a sense that what they're doing is an experience. It's not just a restaurant. It's something that also transports you to another place because of the decor, the experience, the storytelling. You see, you go up the stairs here. One of the coolest things for me was, and this is kind of that like sense of what's real and what's a simulation, is when you exit the door, I was like, well, what are we going to see at the other end? And indeed, you exit into a hotel lobby, and I will show you the reveal of that here as we open up the door. So you're in this hotel lobby, and it's like, close the door, turn around, and I'm like looking at stuff. There were actually two greeters there. But what I'm trying to say is this is an actual hotel. This is the Marriott's AC Hotel, which is a very upscale place. And let me show you the map here, because just if you look to the right there of the SafeHouse, the red arrow, that's where you exit, and that's the AC. So it's very cool that they have you exit through a real space. And one of the things that happened was I was like for a moment thinking, oh, is this a stage set? Is this another themed space? Is it actually a hotel? And pretty soon you discover like, oh yeah, this is definitely a hotel. Look how elaborate it is. But that's a very cool moment, I think, for a guest in a space like this, is that you almost have the sense like you don't know what's real and what's a simulation. So that exit effect, and I would be curious to see the other one, and there's the sign for the AC. I'd be curious to see the other exit, because I think that's one of the coolest things I've experienced in a long time in a theme space, is having that sense of like, wow, I don't know what's real and what's simulation, what's themed and what's real. So I mean, for me, Visiting SafeHouse was just an absolutely great experience for someone like me who studies theme spaces. It was definitely a sign of what we might see in the future. As I mentioned in this video, I hope that more spaces will take some of these approaches, creative design tendencies, experiential and performative moments, and that sense of mystery and immersion, giving that guest a sense of purpose in the space. They help complete the story, and they have a quest all the while that they're enjoying food and drink in this very cool restaurant in Chicago. So yeah, if you make it to Chicago, you definitely have to visit SafeHouse, and you know, it's a space you, I think, will be surprised with, and I think it's a space you will come back time and again to experience all the interesting things that you can discover within its various spaces. Well, here we are at the restroom, and I hope you enjoyed the video feature today here looking at SafeHouse in Chicago. Please come back for additional video features of the Immersive World's Handbook.